Hi, my name is Ashley Hawkins, and I am the Manga Librarian. And today we are going to be talking about manga collection development. This was originally going to be one video, and then I made that video and it was super long. And now it's going to be a series of videos talking about this topic of manga collection development. And we'll just kind of see how many videos it winds up being. But for today, we're going to start off by talking about the basics of manga collection development, sort of the basic things that I recommend to people who are just kind of starting out, who, have noticed that manga is really big in their collection. They kind of want to expand because they know that it will improve their circ records, it will reach certain populations, and they just want more manga in their collection and want to expand beyond just having Naruto. So that's where we're going to start. And then further videos will go a little bit more in depth and with more advice, and we'll go from there. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, basics and pointers. The first thing that I usually recommend to people is that they consider getting the Shonen Jump app. I am in no way sponsored or whatever. I just highly recommend the Shonen Jump app because, one, it is super affordable, and two, most of the titles that patrons are going to request are going to be Shonen Jump titles, just by virtue of the popularity of the Shonen Battle genre. Shonen Battle manga encompasses things like Naruto, My Hero Academia, Demon Slayer, Kimetsu no Yaiba, all of those titles that you, even if you've just got a passing knowledge of manga, you've seen them, you know them, you could kind of recognize them, you've seen them on like patrons' t-shirts, or you just kind of know them tangentially. So I recommend getting the Shonen Jump app because first off, it's a very low investment for a lot of content. Second off, if you are interested in actually reading manga, it's the best bang for your buck in terms of content provision. You gain access to an insane amount of content with just a $2 a month subscription. I get a lot of use out of that particular subscription. It's not a requirement, obviously. Nothing I say is a requirement. These are all suggestions. But I highly recommend it just because you gain access. And the thing is, Shonen Jump does generally provide you the first chapter free. Viz in general will provide you the first chapter of a title free, so you can preview it. And that's also something to keep in mind. A few manga sites will give you the first chapter free, so you can do a preview. Kodansha also does it. And that's all well and good, but you actually kind of want to see how manga progresses throughout to kind of get a taste for how the series actually is. The beginning of a manga, particularly shonen battle manga, can generally be fairly low-key because shonen battle manga is all about building the stakes higher and higher until it reaches a crescendo. And with shonen battle manga, that means that generally they get more violent as time passes on, and that's potentially something, especially if you are in like a middle school or an elementary school community, you really want to keep in mind, depending on the conservatism of your community. For me, I generally don't have to worry about those things. There are other things that I tend to keep an eye on, more in line with, for me, I'm consistently looking at how are women treated, how I tend to look at things like imperialism, how is imperialism kind of worked with, are there sort of trauma points that might come up. It's a little bit more esoteric what I'm kind of keeping an eye on, and that might be the same for you, and that's also a reason to kind of read through things. Japan does have an imperialistic history, so it's kind of a good idea to kind of keep an eye out on some of those things, because some authors do have some very far right nationalistic views. So you do want to kind of be aware of that. It's, it's just like comics in the West, there's always something. Something else that I do is, there aren't a ton of reviews being written for the library audience in terms of manga. It's steadily building as the manga boom has been increasing, but what I do is I just look at regular reviews. And full disclosure, I am mutuals with some people who write these reviews, but we're just mutuals on Twitter. And it's mostly because I enjoyed their reviews that I started following them, and they saw my enthusiasm for manga and their writing that we became mutuals. So I highly recommend But Why Though PC. They have really great reviews, and they tend to do like volume by volume. They also do like episode by episode of anime, which can be really helpful if you're running an anime club. And then I really find Anime Feminist super useful and helpful, particularly because of what my concerns tend to be. And I, just kind of use those reviews. There's other sites, and I'll kind of list them down below. I keep an eye on Anime News Network. I'm having some blanks right now, but there are several sites that I kind of keep an eye on and kind of pay attention to their reviews. And by kind of following them, I get an idea of what's going on. I also follow all the major publishers on Twitter. So I follow Seven Seas, I follow Yen Press, I follow Kodansha, I follow Viz. And that's actually really useful because you will get updates very regularly about what is new and what is freshly available within the manga world. And you'll be seeing fresh new titles that maybe are not what is being requested, but if you had it in your library, it would actually do super well. I have found a lot of things that I get really excited about that I didn't even know existed through following. Like, for example, I'm super into like romances that have a Yakuza member as the love interest. It's just, I don't know, it's a thing. I don't know why I'm into it. It just tends to, I don't know, maybe it's playing the Yakuza games. But and or way I really like Way of the House Husband, so I maybe that has something to play into it. But there's been several of those titles that have been released, so as they get released, I'm like, oh yay, there's more. Or I really love manga with like witches in it. Like I love Witch Hat Atelier, and the popularity of Witch Hat Atelier means that more witch manga is actually getting translated. So I've been seeing new titles that have witches in them, and I'm like, oh yay, there's this new title, I can't wait to get this. And then I'll retweet it and say, oh yay, this title. And then I'm kind of bookmarking it like, yes, when this comes out, I'm gonna get this. And so that's something to kind of, and it also like builds excitement, like there's something new and interesting. And I always like to see what is fresh and what sort of trends are picking up. And then, let's see. I also like to keep an eye on, when I'm selecting, I like to keep an eye on the ratings. I'll link to my original blog post because it goes through an in-depth breakdown of the rating system, but it's similar to the rating system for video games, E for everyone, all the way up through M for mature. And I think it's most helpful for elementary school librarians who are looking to add manga to their collection to be aware of the rating system, although I think everybody kind of should have some awareness. In high school, it gets very fluid because honestly, high schoolers will consume any rating. You can get what are called kodomo titles, which are children's titles, and they'll read them. They'll read Cheese Sweet Home, no problem. And then, but then with elementary school children, you're probably going to want only E or A. Some publishers use E as in E for everyone or A as in all ages. And then you might want some Y as in youth titles, which are generally speaking what are turned into what my generation would have considered Saturday morning cartoons. It's a little bit superfluous with this current generation because they can just watch their cartoons whenever. But yeah, think of Yu-Gi-Oh!, Digimon, Pokemon. They might be Y simply because there is a little bit of violence, a little bit of danger. So those are, but you also kind of want to look at the Ys sometimes because sometimes they can be a little dark. Gundam Wing, for example, is considered Y, and Gundam Wing can actually get super dark. So that's something to keep in mind. So keep in mind the rating systems. There are also some terms that you're going to hear quite a bit. You're going to hear shoujo and shonen all the time. So shoujo means girls or girl, and shonen means boy. And these have to do with the groups of people that manga is marketed to in Japan. So shoujo manga, which I tend to prefer shoujo manga marketed towards girls and women. Usually it's the 12 to 18 market, but honestly, doesn't really matter. Shoujo is usually romance. It tends to run in particular magazines. It has a particular sort of softer art style. There are certain flowery looks. There's like little motifs of flowers and things behind them. But One thing to also keep in mind is that just because something is marketed as shoujo or shonen does not mean that they are specifically only for a particular gender. Gender is a construct, it means nothing. And, you know, I read shonen, I read shoujo, I read everything in between. I read things that are not marketed as shoujo or shonen. They are marketed as josei or seinen. Josei is marketed towards women between 18 and 35, and seinen is men between 18 and 35. And then there's other more esoteric uh, categories, because these are all categories. Manga is a format. These are categories, and then there are genres in between. And so I tend to gravitate actually more towards josei, just because the protagonists tend to be grown women. And, I like romances that are actually among adults more than I like romances with teenagers. But that doesn't mean I don't read any shoujo, or it's very fluid. It's just a way to kind of keep things in mind of what you're kind of looking for. If you're trying to find more romance stuff, then looking for shoujo is going to be a better bet than sifting through shonen. Not that there aren't shonen that have romance in them. For example, Rumiko Takahashi, all of her work is shonen. Yeah, all of her work is shonen, but she has romance all throughout. She loves to have love triangles and all sorts of romantic antics. So that doesn't mean if you've been having students come to you like, I would like to read more manga with more romance, it doesn't mean that you should only look for shoujo. There might be some great shonen titles too, or vice versa. There are some shoujo titles that have great battle scenes. So Fushigi Yugi, for example, by Watasi Yu. That is that's a shoujo manga, and it has really great battle scenes. It has, martial arts in it, and it has a really good storyline. It's actually circulated pretty well among a vast number of my students. So don't be too restricted by the shoujo or shonen thing. I wish I could tell that to a lot of manga and anime fans too, to kind of widen your horizons. And actually, it would be great if we as librarians could really push our manga and anime fans, or our patrons who are manga and anime fans, to, really push those horizons. And my last thing that I'm going to say is try watching some anime. Anime is actually primarily, well, one of the main functions of anime in Japan is to sell manga. Manga is actually way more popular than anime is in Japan. More people read manga than they do watch anime. So it's more of just a marketing method. It is a way to maybe, most of the time anime only runs for like 12 episodes, and it's just to like give you a taste for the story, and then if you want to read more, you've got to go read the manga. So if you get into the characters and are invested in the story, you're going to need to go find the manga to find out what happened to the characters and find out where the story goes. Like Ouran High School Host Club, one of my favorite manga of all time, is one of those series that had a shorter run, and in order to find out what actually happened to all of the characters and find out how the story played out, you had to go find the actual manga. Until recently, Fruits Basket was also in the same case. A lot of shoujo actually gets that 12 to 24 episode little slice, and then you've got to go find the manga to find out what happened. Not all, but it's kind of a thing. Also, just watching one episode will give you a taste for what happens if you just don't feel like reading manga. Maybe you're not comfortable with the format. For whatever reason. Although I'd suggest to maybe just try to move past that, push past it. If you're in a position where you're going to be making purchasing decisions, because the art style is part of what you need to look at, you kind of need to just push past it and enjoy it. I mean, you don't have to love it, but if you're making purchasing decisions, you do need to get a feel for it. So yeah, so those are kind of my basic pointers if you are doing manga collection development. I hope it's helpful, and I'm going to go ahead and leave this off here, and I will see you next time. Bye.